I had been trying to meditate for weeks. Every morning, same story. Phone buzzing. Kids yelling somewhere down the hall. My brain running through a to-do list before I even got out of bed. So today, I decided enough was enough. I found the quietest corner of the house, rolled out the mat, pulled the curtains halfway so the light came in soft and gold, sat down cross-legged, spine straight, hands resting on my knees like I'd seen in every meditation video I'd ever half-watched. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath in. For exactly 3 seconds, everything was still. Then I heard it. AMRAAAW. I opened my eyes. My cat Oliver was sitting directly in front of me, 2 feet away, staring, not blinking, just staring, like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact moment. I sighed, closed my eyes again, and told myself to ignore him. He meowed louder. I want to be clear about something. Oliver is not a quiet cat. He has never once in his life been described as chill. He's the kind of cat who narrates his entire day out loud, whether or not anyone's listening. But I didn't know, in that moment, that he was about to narrate my meditation too. I took another breath, tried to focus on the sound of my own breathing, the way every app tells you to. I heard paws on the hardwood floor, getting closer. I peeked one eye open. Oliver had moved. He was no longer across the room. He was right beside the mat now, sitting up straight, tail wrapped neatly around his paws, looking at me like he was waiting for instructions. I closed my eye again. He meowed, just once, almost polite about it. I ignored him. He meowed again, less polite this time. At this point I made the mistake of laughing, just a little, under my breath. And if you've ever lived with a cat, you know, the second they get a reaction, that's it, game over, you've lost. Oliver stood up, walked closer, and then, without any warning at all, he sat down directly beside me on the mat and attempted, genuinely attempted, to copy my posture. He tucked his front paws under himself, straightened his back, closed his eyes. For one full second I thought, okay, maybe this is happening. Maybe my cat is about to meditate with me. Then his eyes snapped back open and he let out the loudest, most dramatic meow I have ever heard come out of a 7-pound animal. I lost it. I started laughing so hard I had to put a hand down to steady myself. Oliver looked completely unbothered by my laughter. If anything, he looked proud of himself, like he'd just said something very important and was waiting for me to respond. I wiped my eyes, took one more breath, and looked at him. "Buddy," I said, "this is supposed to be quiet time." Oliver blinked at me slowly, then meowed again. That was the moment I understood something important. This was not going to be a peaceful 10 minutes of silence, because somewhere in that little orange head of his, Oliver had made a decision. He wanted in. He wanted to meditate too, on his terms, at his volume, with absolutely zero interest in silence. I sat there on that mat, laughing, defeated, staring at this ridiculous cat who had just single-handedly ended my meditation practice before it even started. And somewhere behind the laughter, I had a strange little thought. What if this exact chaos, was actually what I needed? I had no idea yet how right that thought would turn out to be. 2 days later, I decided to push things further. "Okay, Oliver," I said, sitting down on the mat and setting a timer on my phone. "Today we're doing 10 full minutes." He sat beside me like he understood exactly what I'd said, which was probably wishful thinking on my part, but I like pretending otherwise. I hit start. Silence. 1 minute passed. Oliver didn't move. I peeked over, half expecting him to already be causing trouble, but he was sitting perfectly still, eyes half closed, tail curled neatly around his paws. 2 minutes, still quiet. 3 minutes. I started to think maybe yesterday had actually changed something. Maybe he really had figured this out. Then I saw his ear twitch, just slightly, a tiny movement, barely noticeable. I kept my eyes closed, but I could feel him shift beside me. A faint sound drifted in from outside. Birds, somewhere near the window, barely audible. I almost hadn't noticed it myself. Oliver noticed. Both ears swiveled toward the sound. His eyes, which had been half closed a moment ago, snapped fully open. I watched him try, genuinely try, to stay still. His body stayed in position, but his eyes darted toward the window, then back toward me, like he was asking permission to break character. I said nothing. I wanted to see what he'd do. He held it together for maybe 4 more seconds. Then a bird landed on the branch right outside the glass, and that was the end of any pretense of meditation. Oliver exploded off the mat like he'd been launched. He hit the windowsill in one jump, paws pressed against the glass, and immediately started up his loudest, most excited chattering, that fast, clicking, half-meow sound cats make when a bird is standing right there being unbearably rude about it. I sat there on the mat, alone, 10-minute timer still running, watching my meditation partner have a complete meltdown over a sparrow. I laughed so hard I had to lie back on the mat and just breathe through it. So much for 10 minutes of stillness. But later that afternoon, something different happened. I sat back down on the mat, not because I was trying to meditate this time, just because I was tired. It had been a long day, and I wanted somewhere quiet to sit for a minute before starting dinner. I wasn't performing calm. I wasn't trying to prove anything to myself or to Oliver. I was just tired, and I sat down, and I let my shoulders drop. Oliver noticed. I expected him to come running over the way he always did, tapping my knee, meowing, demanding to be part of whatever I was doing. But this time was different. He walked over slowly. No meowing, no dramatic entrance. He just crossed the room, quiet, almost careful, and settled down beside me on the mat. He didn't climb into my lap. He didn't stare at me or try to copy anything. He just sat there, close enough that I could feel his warmth against my leg, and stayed. No interruptions, no opinions, just him, beside me. I looked down at him, and for a second I felt something shift in my chest, something I hadn't expected to feel over something this small. Maybe this was what I'd actually been looking for the whole time. Not silence, not some perfect empty room with nothing to distract me. Just this. Someone choosing to sit beside you when you're tired, without needing anything from you at all. I realized then that Oliver had been trying to teach me something the entire week, in his own chaotic, meowing, bird-chasing way. Meditation was never about achieving total silence. It was about finding a moment of peace wherever you could get it, even if that peace came with fur on your yoga pants and an occasional shout at a sparrow. Oliver shifted beside me, resting his head lightly against my leg. Then, quietly, he began to purr. I sat there in the fading afternoon light, listening to that low, steady rumble, feeling more at peace than I had in any of my actual attempts at meditation. I had one more morning planned, one more try. I had no idea it was about to become the most surprising 10 minutes of the entire week. The next morning, I set up the mat one more time. I didn't say anything to Oliver. I didn't call him over or make a production of it. I just rolled out the mat in our usual spot and sat down. I didn't even get fully settled before he came running. He crossed the room fast, tail up, and sat right down beside the mat like he'd been waiting for this moment since the sun came up. No hesitation, no wandering off to check the window first. He just sat, right next to me, and waited. I lowered myself down beside him. He copied my posture instantly, back straight, paws tucked, like he'd been practicing. Both of us closed our eyes. For a few seconds, there was nothing. No meowing, no tapping, no bird outside the window demanding his attention. Just quiet, early morning light, and the sound of both of us breathing. 1 minute passed. I opened one eye just slightly, checking. Oliver hadn't moved. 2 minutes. Still nothing. Still calm. His breathing had slowed into a steady rhythm, chest rising and falling in that same unhurried way it did right before he fell asleep in a sunbeam. 3 minutes. I could hardly believe it. After everything, the shouting, the interruptions, the bird chase, the failed 10-minute attempt just days earlier, Oliver was sitting beside me, eyes closed, completely at peace. I slowly opened my eyes to look at him properly. He was still there, calm, still, genuinely, impossibly still. I felt something warm rise in my chest, somewhere between pride and disbelief. My chaotic, loud, bird-obsessed cat had actually done it. He'd learned to sit quietly beside me, not because I'd trained him to, but because somewhere along the way, he'd decided he wanted to. I couldn't help myself. I leaned over slightly and whispered, "Good boy." Oliver's eyes shot open immediately. He turned his head toward me with an expression I can only describe as offended, like I had personally ruined the moment by acknowledging it out loud. Then he opened his mouth and let out the loudest, most dramatic murr-oh of the entire week. I burst out laughing so hard I had to press a hand against my chest. Of course, the second I complimented him, he had to say something about it. 3 minutes of perfect silence, gone in an instant, because apparently my cat cannot handle being praised without a rebuttal. Oliver stood up, gave his fur one quick shake like he was dusting off the whole interaction, and walked away across the room like absolutely nothing had happened. I sat there on the mat by myself, laughing, wiping my eyes, watching him settle into a sunbeam across the room like he hadn't just delivered the most perfectly timed punchline I'd heard all week. Looking back now, I think about everything that happened over those few days. The meditation I never actually got to finish. The bird that ended a perfectly good 10 minutes. The quiet afternoon where he sat beside me needing nothing at all. The morning he finally learned to be still, only to ruin it the second I said something nice. I started this whole thing because I wanted a few minutes of peace. I didn't expect to find it sitting next to a very loud, very opinionated orange cat who apparently has strong feelings about being complimented. But I did. Not the kind of peace you find in silence. The kind you find in someone choosing to be near you, copying your breathing, flopping down beside you, chasing birds, interrupting your quiet moments, and then, every once in a while, giving you a few minutes of stillness anyway, just because he wanted to. I closed my eyes one more time that morning, just to sit with it a little longer. I heard him walk back over. I didn't open my eyes, but I could feel him settle in close beside me. Then, quietly, right next to my ear, I heard one small, gentle meow. I smiled without opening my eyes. Some habits, I guess, you don't grow out of. You just learn to love them. If your cat has ever ruined your peaceful moment in the funniest way possible, drop a C in the comments and subscribe for more hilarious cat adventures.